welcome to a very special Indianomics. The default rate at microfinance companies don't seem to be ebbing. That may be part of the reason why the Microfinance SRO, self-regulating organization, MFIN, pushed back its new rules that only 3 loans may be given per borrower. It has been deferred to April 2025 from the earlier deadline of January 1, 2025. To get a 360-degree perspective of the microfinance industry's problems, I have with me today an elite panel. Joining me are Aishwary Khandelwal, the Associate Director, India Ratings and Research; Chandan Thakur, Deputy Director, SA-DHAN, which is also a self-regulatory organization of microfinance institutions; Sachin Seth, the Regional MD, India and South Asia at CRIF. CRIF is a credit scoring, much like civil; and Anu Jogesh, a special guest here. She's a PhD doctoral researcher from the London School of Economics and Politics. For the last 6 months, has been touring extensively in rural North India, but more specially, she is an ex-CNBC TV 18. 18 years ago, she worked with us as our star FMCG reporter. So, gentlemen, and Anu, thank you very much for joining me. Well, let me start with Sachin Seth first. Sachin, if you can lay down the data itself, according to the scoring sheet, have the default rate increased for MFI borrowers?
Yeah, Latha. So, Latha, thanks for having me here. And yeah, I mean, all of us are seeing that stress for last couple of quarters. Mm-hmm. And as per the latest report, CRIF has released just recently, I mean, there is obviously a bit of a stress which continues. And specifically to the numbers, as I think most of the people do have the report, that, when we talk about, loan at risk between, let's say, 31 to 90 days, it is almost 2.8%. And if you take 31 to 90 plus 90 and 180 together, it comes to about 5.2%, right? And that's obviously a bit of increase from the previous quarter. So definitely it continues to be a bit stressed portfolio at this moment.
Okay. Chandan, what's your sense? I guess, 1 minute, Mr. Seth, this number is as of what, October?
Well, this number is as of cut-off September end. Okay. Because obviously the data gets pulled and then get processed and the report gets published.
So your October, November, December data is awaited. Chandan, what's the situation on the ground? Do you think December things improved, or they are pretty stressed? Because otherwise MFIN would not have pushed back the deadline.
So thanks, Latha. I think Sachin has already mentioned like the number has increased a bit. But I would also like to highlight a bit like why the number has increased. And in the first quarter itself, a few major regions. One was like, of course, the general election, the climate issues, the unprecedented heat. And one more thing is that I would like to highlight, even post-COVID, we know like the demand in the sector. I mean, the loan has gone up in terms of disbursement and all. But in terms of the employment generation to pay back the loan, that is still not, up to the mark, even in the rural area. So that unemployment or in terms of the repayment capacity is not as much in terms of the pre-COVID era. Yeah. So that is one of the reasons a bit like the number has gone up. However, we are sure in terms of we are really optimistic in terms of the good Kharif season and some preventive measures has been taken by both the SROs. So things are getting better with every passing day, and we are sure like in the last quarter, like this quarter, in the quarter result will be better in terms of the favorable for the sector. And hopefully from next financial year onwards, we will be back to the normalcy.
Yeah. So, no, Chandan, I was going to ask all of you what you all see as the reasons for the issue. Thanks for starting it off. But you are saying that December numbers, by your guess, would be better than the September numbers. Is that your, I mean, I know it's anecdotal, but is that your guess?
It would be more or less same. I mean, September number and December number would be more or less same.
More or less same.
They were like the last quarter, the March figure would be better than,
so the current quarter you're expecting better. Yeah, I guess we live in that hope. Aishwary, you would have more granular details. Would you say that Q3 would have been just stable, or could it have gotten worse?
So I would say, I mean, Q3 delinquencies is expected to peak out in terms of the delinquencies numbers. I think 4Q onwards, we could see some, the decline in delinquencies is expected to stop now from the 4Q onwards. But the stress in the microfinance sector, we believe is still 2-3 quarters. We expect it continues to stay. The normalization is expected to from second half of FY26 itself. I mean, what we have mentioned it in the report, because if you look at the stage 2 loans, which is 30 to 90 DPD, it continues to increase, which indicates that there's still remaining stress in the sector, which would be coming out in the third quarter results also. So unless this stage 2 loans declines, the stress will continue to be evolved in the next quarter also. Okay. So we expect, the normalcy in the delinquencies is still 2-3 quarters away.
Okay, I get your point. But what you're saying is that even more defaults than Q3 perhaps will not happen in Q4, but declines will take time, correct? Okay, Anu Jogesh, you were touring in rural India when the news came that MFIN is asking all the lenders to restrict the number of loans to 3 per borrower. Yes. How was it received?
Well, it was actually very slow, but what we essentially saw, what I saw, is that even what they call center heads, women who are part of these BETHAKs, who are essentially, head of the joint liability groups, were also struggling to pay back. These are supposed to be borrowers who have the capacity to pay back well and were struggling. And we heard from loan officers that essentially there were people leaving houses and going away. Likely to try, they say absconding bhag gaye hain, but actually they're likely going to be with their husbands who are in cities to try and earn something to come back. Because it's important to note where this money is coming from, what's paying back. And as one of your guests said, it's not rural and farm income that's largely paying this back. It's often, when I sit in these BETHAKs, it is women waiting on the phone for their husbands who do paint polish ka kaam or do construction work or drive taxis in Mumbai, Bangalore, Pune, to essentially pay that money back. And it's literally that interest payment. So kish se kish. So interest payment to interest payment, they are waiting for money to essentially come in.
Bringing down the to 3 borrowers is not easy because you're usually taking 1 loan to pay the premium.
Exactly. You are taking 1 loan to pay for the other. And if you're not, because you suddenly have a limit, you're depending on your local relationships. So a lot of loan officers call this pipelining, which is, I need money, I've exhausted my number, so I've borrowed in your name. And then I've left you to pay it back.
Okay, so that's a big social issue. Chandan, what is your sense? Why did MFIN push it back? Would it have been utter chaos if they had stuck to the Jan 1st deadline?
We all know that there are stress, there are cases of over-leveraging, multiple lending and all. Even we had one meeting with all the CEOs with MFI, and we released the Sankalp guidelines also, wherein we and along with all the MFIs, we have agreed upon to follow up, to follow the guidelines in terms of all the due diligence practices, following the household income, following the the credit bureau check and all those stuff. And if you are complying with all the guidelines like FOIR of prescribed by the Reserve Bank, the number of lenders will automatically come down. And with new...
Why was the rule deferred? Did the microfinance guys come and tell you that there is too much pain at the bottom of the pyramid, so please push back the rule? What was the reason for that deferral?
See, the amount of disbursement, of course, the disbursement has gone down. So it takes a bit of time to, to restrict with the numbers with 2, 3 or any particular number like that. Because it's a gradual process. So that might be one of the underlying reasons.
Okay. Mrs. Seth, what's your sense? Has the number of borrowers with 4 loans increased in the third quarter?
So, Latha, as we are seeing the trend and based on purely on the data, while we have observed that, the SROs are working towards sort of putting guardrails, etc., or implementation of that, but I think many of the lenders consciously have started doing that. And we are also seeing the improvement of that. So if you see the data we have published, it shows that there is a percentage point, improvement in terms of let's say, reduction in the number of, so whatever lending is happening today, there is a percentage point improvement in terms of number of borrowers or number of lenders to a borrower is coming down. So which shows that there is a conscious effort being made, and probably this is one of the reason. And I'm sure if these guardrails are put in by SROs and people follow these guardrails, I'm sure this will have a positive impact. Though the quantum of impact is still unknown, it will only be reflected in next couple of quarters. But definitely this is a positive sign, and this is something which has already started showing benefit.
Okay. Aishwary, you, in your latest report, you have a table, and that table will come up. It was flashing even as Mr. Seth was speaking, that the rate of growth of loan outstandings was far quicker than the rate of growth of rural wages, both agri and non-agri. So is this an income problem? Incomes didn't grow as fast as consumption or as fast as maybe inflation.
I think the average debt outstanding per borrower, that also increased significantly over the last 2 to 3 years. Plus, the agri wage growth was not keeping pace with this over leveraging or the increase in the average debt stock outstanding per borrower. Not only the microfinance borrowings, but also the other borrowings also increased during this period. It's only during this current year, I mean, we are seeing that average outstanding per borrower is declining because of the guardrails being put in place. We expect this to continue in the second half of FY25 also and FY26 also, with the second set of guardrails coming in. It is good for the long term, but yeah, in the short term, it will have some impact on the delinquencies.
Okay. The problem that rural India did not have enough to pay back, which Anu Jogesh is telling us, that it was almost always urban remittance which is helping them pay back, is a long-standing problem. It's not something that happened yesterday. Is it that in the last, say, post-COVID, when we had a rush of foreign money coming in, PE money, did people overlend? Was there an over-enthusiasm on the part of some microfinance guys? Chandan Thakur, was that the situation? PE paisa tha, bahut aa raha tha, in 21 and all, we saw excellent FDI flows and PE flows. Were they a little ambitious or reckless in terms of the expectations of returns?
See, post-COVID, of course, since as I mentioned also, like the demand was quite high, and there were some, disbursement as well that perhaps leads to the, region of over leveraging on all. But one thing I always feel, and as I mentioned, like a bit of distress in the rural India, a bit of issue in terms of the income of the people. I mean, in addition to the domestic issue, if you see the external factors, there are many people, Indians who work abroad, particularly a country like Israel and other places. They had to come back. And all those remittance and all. If you see the situation, like Bihar is one of the top states in terms of the microfinance. People from Bihar, they have been working in various states. But again, the climate part, we saw in the month of May, there was major issues.
Climate is...
Entire nation was under red alert. The southern India because of heavy rain, eastern India because of cyclone, northern India and western India because of under severe heat. So all these have affected the repayment power. But of course, as with all the guidelines, with all the guardrails, with all the preventive measures, things are looking better. MFIs are also looking really good.
I take your point. I think one of the big takeaways that is coming is that things are peaking in the third quarter and they will stabilize in the fourth quarter, and it'll take only 3 quarters for it to come down. That may be H2FY. That is a very important point that I'm taking away. But there are two other factors that I want to discuss. Reserve Bank says that MFI loans the debt servicing should not be more than 50% of the household's income. But how do you assess household's income in places like this? That's one problem I want to ask my panel after this break. For Bazaar viewers, of course, it will be Chartbusters, but you can listen to this entire very interesting conversation after market hours.